Secretary, please call the roll.
I shall. Elsa Payne, Chairman.
Present.
Ian Featherstone, Vice Chairman.
Present.
George Dequist, Secretary, Present. Chuck Worley.
Present.
John F. Claffey, Jr.
Present.
Jason Becker.
Present.
Robert Mizell. Absent. Peter Stump.
Present.
And Robert Singer.
Present.
Roll call has been taken, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Stump, you'll be seated for the call missile.
Thank you.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 10th, 2014?
Make a motion we approve the minutes of November 10th.
Second.
Is there any discussion or comments?
Comment on page 4, item B, allocation to discussion. The second bullet item, my concern with the way it reads is that that is the position of the board, and at that time, the board, only perhaps 1 or 2 members indicated that position. So I don't know if you want to add in front of it, in the opinion of 1 or 2 WPCA members. I don't recall how many indicated that. I know one in particular did. Anybody else have that same concern?
I think your point is valid, that it does read as if it were a conclusion. It was not, it was one of the options discussed.
Okay, we can say one of the options discussed was
That reflects, rather than word best.
No,
Or just remove
no.
it. How about remove it entirely? Because it's already mentioned in the first bullet point.
Yeah.
You're all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. I would agree with that.
Are there any other comments?
So delete that second bullet.
Would you like to amend your motion?
I'll amend the motion to the correction that Chuck Worley made. I did not hear every word he said, I'm sorry.
Well, we're just deleting the second bullet item on page 4, allocation discussion. You just need to accept the minutes as amended.
Okay.
Right, but they need to understand what it was, how it's being amended. Could you not hear me?
No, say it again, please.
Do you have a copy of the minutes?
Yeah, right.
Page 4,
Page 4.
This one right here.
item 4,
Thank you.
Just remove that.
4B. Bullet, the second bullet. So we're deleting that.
I understand. I'm amending my motion to category before, the second category entitled Target Reduction Approach best reflects how the program was originally presented and can be defended. So I'm removing that.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Does any board member wish to make a comment? All right, I'll now open up the next half hour or so for public comment. Does anyone else care to speak? Yes.
Very good.
Did you offer them the mic?
Yeah, there's one down there at the, there's one.
I don't,
They're not obligated to do that.
I don't believe it'll be necessary for me to have a mic to say what I need to say. During your last board meeting, you did not have a section addressing comments from the public. Because of that, Barry Moore sent the board a letter, which you conveniently did not even mention. Therefore, I am going to read it to you so that it will become part of the public record. Dear Old Saybrook WPCA members, since public comments was not allowed at the November 10th meeting, I am putting what I would like to have said in writing, namely, 1, thank you for finally having an open discussion of the construction management cost. Mr. Claffey and Mr. Wizard were incorrect when they stated that the voters approved a 25-25-50 CMC. This split was only applicable to those participating in the CWF program and for Lot Pacific costs only. The referendum on August 11, 2009 made no mention of any such split. On the contrary, item 2 on the referendum asked if the town shall appropriate and bond $42 million for the decentralized wastewater management district and provide ongoing funding of administrative costs for the systems. If Mr. Claffey or Mr. Wizard have documents supporting their position of the 25-25-50 split for the CMC, I respectfully request that they present it at the next meeting or withdraw their remarks in order to set the record straight. It appears that Mr. Featherstone is the only member who actually did his homework. Recall that he referred to material presented to the public prior to the referendum, which stated the administrative cost would be borne by the town. He also expressed concerns that by shifting those costs back to the property owner, the WPCA will be seen as engaging in a bait and switch scheme. He couldn't be more right. I cannot appreciate the fact the committee is looking ahead and concerned with setting a precedent in assessing or not assessing phase 1 costs. Yes, the cost may very well increase with the work on the AT systems begins, but we, the voters, all knew that back in 2009. Just because the cost may be above original expectation does not justify shifting them now from the general fund to the property owners. The fact was the entire town would share in 100% of the administrative costs. This, using this CWF for construction costs was incentive for approving the decentralized system. Put another way, voters accepted this as part of the benefit of not having a centralized system. Mr. Featherstone raised the question as to what a reasonable dollar amount might be for the benefit of non-WWMD properties derived from the decentralized system. Interesting, but rhetorically, since my question may be arbitrary. Whatever policy is adopted, it must be clear and credible. I believe if you look at the time, to go back to the Decentralized Wastewater Management Facility Plan, June 2009, the document presented to the public prior to the referendum will find that the only clear, credible, non-arbitrary, and defensible policy is the one which 100% of the CMC is paid for by the town's general fund. To cast a vote on CMC is irresponsible and a disservice to the property owners within the WWMD. That is a letter that Mr. Moore sent the board.
Okay, very
It
good.
is now on record. I would like to also make a comment for myself concerning the minutes. The minutes could be just taking the agenda and adding a few phrases here and there, because it's just general reading. And I do not believe it reflects adequately on what is discussed at some of these meetings. And fortunately, now we have videos of the ongoing meetings if we do not lose the sound to understand what is going on. Thank you.
I'll make a comment.
George, it's public comment. You don't have to make
Okay,
a
I don't have
comment.
to answer? That's up to you.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. And as a friendly reminder to this board that the minutes of the meeting, of your meeting where the language was changed with regards to in-kind services, was after members and residents in the Phase 1 project signed up for your program. So when you changed the language that included in-kind services, which reflects in the soft costs, that was after people within the Saybrook Acres District had signed up for the program, understanding it one way, and then it got changed after we signed up for it. This is nothing new. This has been presented to you in the past. We've spoken to you about it in the past. We gave you a copy of it in the past. I would like to again remind you, if that is not a clear-cut example of bait and switch, where everybody signs up for one program and then you look at the minutes of the meeting shortly thereafter, you change the rules of the game, I don't know what is. So I would again ask you, if you don't, or if you question what I'm saying, go back. It's clear as day. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, George, for reading the letter. Saved me the trouble to do it. I had something else that actually I thought of after I wrote that letter to you all last week. I had an opportunity to speak to Gracia about the engineering costs in some of the areas in Phase 1. And this addresses the targeted reduction approach, which if I recall from the last meeting, it seemed to be somewhat attractive to the board as far as the direction to go in. Because the devil's always in the details. And if I could give an example here of two locations. Saybrook Acres 1 had an engineering cost of $92,404, 23 properties. It's $4,000 per property, times 50%, $2,008 to the homeowner. Fenwood 1 had $18,095 in engineering for 18 properties for $1,005 per property times 50%, $502. 4 times. Now, if you spread them over the whole 314 properties, I mean, if you spread all these design costs over the 315, it's going to be unfair to the people in Fenwood 1 because they get no benefit from the design, the engineering costs that were in Saybrook Acres 1, 2, and 3. They would have a beef with that, I think. I would if I was one of them. Conversely, I was in Saybrook Acres 3, I think. I'm paying a lot more than they did. But the people in Fenwood 1 got essentially the same system I got. So how do you justify assessing me a larger benefit? We got the same benefit from our systems. The inflated engineering costs that we had at the beginning didn't add any value to our property. In fact, those designs weren't even used on all but maybe 1 or 2 properties. They were scrapped and the contractors started doing the design. So while that kind of seemed attractive at first blush, I think there's a problem with it. Because you're making some guys pay more and the other guys, if you put it back to us on, you know, in the early part of the program, in the Saybrook Acres part, I don't see how you can assess us a benefit any more than you can assess the people over in Fenwick. We got the same darn systems. The other thing I'd like to mention is the going back to the Clean Water Fund's benefit assessment policy, which sort of got us all into this thing. It's back. I went back to the minutes again, and the Clean Water Fund benefit assessment was the one that brought in these administrative, so-called soft costs into the discussion of what we would be assessed. And up until that policy was adopted on November 1st of 2010, there was no discussion of the homeowners picking up those costs. I still don't understand how that policy even got into that document you guys did. I mean, nobody's been able to offer us a clear explanation of how we went from the town picking up 100% of the administrative costs to the homeowners now picking up half of it. Nobody to this day, and we've been asking them for 18 months, nobody's been able to tell us what that disconnect is all about. And I mean, you have to do that, I think, if you're going to start assessing us for these costs. One more point, and I brought this up before, but it's important that we get this on the record, especially now that we're talking about this. On May 17th, 2010, residents of Saybrook Acres came to this auditorium, and the program was outlined to us, taking advantage of the Clean Water Funds for our construction costs, and there was some information at that meeting, and there's even a slide that show it, that we were told the town would be paying 100% of the administrative costs. Maybe that's what you were referring to last week, Mr. Featherstone. That was May 17th, 2010. November 1st, 2010 was when you folks adopted the clean water, the benefit assessment for the Clean Water Fund participants. Go back to the minutes between May 17th and November 1st, and there was not one bit of discussion in your meetings about the particulars of this benefit assessment. There was no detail given. There was some references that Gracia said, oh, we're working on the benefit assessment, period. There was no public notice. Nobody in the public was ever informed about what was going into this benefit assessment policy. We had no opportunity to speak on that. If we had attended the meetings, we wouldn't have known anything about it, particularly, except, oh, it was being discussed out there. So all of a sudden it shows up on November 1st, and you guys pass it. I don't know what happened. But I do know that the person that was chairman of this committee back on May 1st and resigned on November 1st, right after the vote was taken, that was his last meeting, was the same gentleman that was later named the site manager for the project and left under some sort of circumstances nobody really knows about. So I just put that forward, that there was a lot of miscommunication and, you know, people not being informed on the history of this whole soft cost issue. You know, obviously, I think you're going to do what you want to do, but I think knowing the history of it now, I tried to brief you as well as I could in that letter. Maybe you did some more research on your own. Maybe you found something contrary to what I'm trying to tell you. Tell us. It's there. But, you know, I think to assess us for the soft cost would be, it would be a bait and switch. It really would. We were not told this was going to happen when we signed up for these things. And we in Saybrook Acres, when we were here at that May 17, 2010 meeting, we were told we had 30 days to opt in or out. And then a few months later, the whole thing changed. We had already signed up. We couldn't have gotten out of it. I mean, is that a way to treat your fellow citizens? I don't think so. So, that's all for tonight.
Just to reiterate on what they said, if we tried to get out at that point, which I did, I was told I would have to pay $3,000 to opt out. You didn't have the numbers, but your people were telling that was the number we were given. So at that point, I was almost forced to stay in, even though I wanted to get out. And that was before my system was put in. So we were given a lot of things going on. One more thing I'd like to ask is, I see your agenda. Are we discussing the soft cost tonight? Because I don't really see it spelled out in there. I see a lot of things in there, and people are coming here to listen about the soft cost because you said last week, or last meeting, that you were going to do something about it, and I don't see it on the agenda. So is it fair to assume that you're not going to talk about it, or you are going to talk about it?
No. It's agenda item 9.
It's construction, no, it's there, Barry. Construction management costs.
Change the name of it.
Okay. That's not construction management, that's all.
Well, it's the same.
Bait and switch.
Maybe not.
That's all I wanted to
Maybe
know.
not.
It didn't look like
Bait
it
and
to me,
switch.
so glad that I'm
Again.
gonna talk about it.
They're hard to follow.
If there's no one else that wishes to speak, I'll close the public comment session. And move on to staff reports. Is there anything with financial? The only thing I really have is the 2015 meeting schedule. You can pass these out.
Oh, so it's not financial?
No, we have nothing from Gracia.
if you could approve that, we could post it. I don't know if you want to approve it now or put it on the agenda. And you know, the meeting is at 7:30, so maybe we can discuss, if anyone wants to make it earlier, or discuss it next time. But those are the dates for next year. And that's a whole calendar, so you can see when the meetings are. I just have one. The last thing is the town holidays. Every government knows about them, just so you know what town hall is. That's it. So if you'd consider approving 2015 schedule, that's all I have. I didn't get the customer report.
Good evening. Much of my effort in the past 2 weeks has gone to phase 2 planning. As most of you may know, the stipulated judgment has a deadline of September 30th, 2015 for completion of construction in phase 2. That deadline needs to be addressed along with other things that we're doing in the program. So we have met with our attorneys to discuss that prior to having a meeting with DEEP. There will be a meeting with DEEP in the near future. I will probably report after the first of the year more on this. With the holidays, it will take that amount of time before we can get to that. With regard to enforcement, I've still been working with individual residents to get them to either do the work or confirm that they've done it. And we've now whittled down that list to well under 10 that may end up getting an enforcement letter from us. I'm continuing to work on 2 agreements. The second amendment to the health service agreement is on the agenda tonight. We'll talk about that when we get there. The joint defense agreement was originally generated so that legal defense efficiencies could be created with CRAD. They asked for an amendment to that to include any enforcement activities, and while there's no problem with that, it ends up being a lot of technical considerations with regard to what specific activities they're involved in, we're involved in, and what attorneys may be obligated to do in each of those specific cases. So we're still working on that. Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have that ironed out as well. On Monday, I meet with John Conway regarding the appeals. So that's still in progress. The upgrade standards are not quite ready, so we'll have to put that public hearing off until the next meeting. The reason is there are 5 stakeholders. There's us, there's public health locally, there's public health at the state, there's DEEP, and also our attorneys weigh in. So even though we don't have substantive changes, every time we talk about one little word, everybody weighs in, and it seems like one more thing comes up. It has to go around to all 5 parties again. So it's just taking a little longer. We continue our process and planning for work schedule in phase 2. And I'm working on the personal services agreements. They're due at the end of the year, and Gracia has put those together. I'll be reviewing them, and hopefully at the next meeting, we'll have those for a vote, so we'll be able to take care of those before the end of the year. And that's it.
Are there any questions from the
I have a
board?
question. You mentioned something about the CRAD agreement. Did you say that you're still working on the CRAD agreement?
One of them is done. You have a vote on it tonight. The other one is still in progress.
Which other one?
The joint defense agreement.
Oh, joint defense agreement. So that's not included in what we got?
Not tonight, no. They're separate agreements.
And the joint defense agreement is, again?
It was originally put together so that one attorney could represent the same interests for the WPCA and for CRAD. It was meant to be an efficiency in regard to that. And the health department wanted to have that, those legal costs paid for by us, which we agreed to. So So now they've specifically asked that we include enforcement in that. Hopefully we don't need much of either of these agreements, but they have to be in place.
Does anyone else?
Any other questions?
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the upgrade standards revision review of the hearing. And,
Just reschedule it.
we'll reschedule. Everyone ready? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the construction management costs. We've had some discussion at our last meeting. We had some options passed around for the board to consider, including one from the Board of Selectmen. And so I'll open it up to the floor, to the board as to if they're ready to make a decision. I'll entertain motions. And I will also remind the board that Mr. Sanger or Mr. Gwiz will be able to vote on this.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. If there are any motions made during this portion, neither you nor Mr. Sanger will be able to vote on as it's been deemed a conflict of interest, because you're
I'm not
in
seated.
part of phase one. Yeah, I know you're not seated, but just so to make it clear, that's the reason.
So we're voting or not?
No, you won't
Okay,
be able
I
to.
understand. Thank you.
You want to mention that we got this memo from Russia, updated.
There's one, as part of the options that we gave, last meeting, we gave Gracia a couple of assignments, and she wrote us a memorandum dated November 14th, outlining some revisions to some of the options and figures that we asked for. So that's also open for discussion. Does anyone want to speak?
It's open for discussion. Are we going to discuss specifics? What?
Well, I'm saying, is anybody ready to make a motion?
Or discuss.
Or do you
Well,
want to discuss?
you got to make the motion before we have discussion if it's going to be a motion,
But if in general, would you rather have a general discussion beforehand?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. All right, John, do you want to say anything?
well, then I suggest that Ian do the refresh us on what we're talking about.
Sure. I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, basically what we've talked about from the last meeting, from the discussions we've had, from the discussions among the board members and listening to public comment, we did direct Gracia to put together some numbers to firm up, to get some idea of what costs could be attributed to each homeowner that was part of phase one. There was a comment made tonight about costs, future costs are lower than early costs, and that is really at the heart of some of the issues we've had. How do you fairly apportion these costs so that each person pays a fair amount? And that is what the board has struggled with heavily over the past year and a half. So what we had asked Gracia to do is put together costs that could be deemed related really to getting a system in the ground, not so much a cost of program management, because we do agree, I think the board agrees, well, I think we generally agree, that program administration and those sorts of costs were clearly laid out that they would be paid for by the town. But there's a cost to put a system in the ground that's not just the construction cost. The clearest example I can give is determining where the property borders are. If you don't know where your property ends, the risk is you put your system on somebody else's property. You can't have that. That's a cost. That's not the contractor's obligation who's doing the installation. That's the cost of the engineering piece to make sure we're putting in the system in the right place. Those are some of the costs that we had asked Gracia to separate out, and also a cost, for example, CRAD. CRAD's another good example, because anybody, whether you're in the district or out of the district, you still have to pay a fee to get a permit to discharge. If you're going to replace your system privately, you have to pay one way or another. So what we ended up with is a cost breakout that comes out to an engineering piece to get a system in the ground attributable to that homeowner of approximately $941, and a cost of the permit to discharge, the CRAD functions that are attributable to the homeowner, of $214, $215. So that's where we are as far as the breakdown of this targeted reduction. And that is, as Chuck just pointed out, that is a 50% cost. The total cost of those services were double that. They do reflect the reduction that the town would pay a quarter, and that the state grant would pay 1/4. So after a lot of deliberation, one of the big concerns we have, or some of us have on the board, is how do we protect the town? There's a lot of competing interests. We have to protect the town taxpayer, the general taxpayer, from the future. If costs were to rise because systems were far more complicated on future properties, then how is that fair that all taxpayers share in that cost when that cost is directly related to a very difficult property? It has to be taken care of. The argument could be made it's not fair for the general taxpayer to just pay all the costs because they don't have those problems. Whereas someone who is a very difficult lot and requires extensive engineering, that's a function of that lot. It's not a function of the general town. So we have to weigh all these competing factors. And a lot of discussions were around how do we do this fairly, and obviously a lot of comment from the public over the past couple of years. We tried to incorporate all that into this to arrive at a fair method that really reflects the costs of getting a system in the ground and taking out those costs that really don't belong to the public, to the homeowners, which is the administration, the things that were noted in the PowerPoint slides that were presented in 2009. So that's where we are tonight. We're at a point where we think we have a pretty good feel for the engineering costs because they cover the entire phase 1. And it spreads them equally over all properties in phase 1. The pool is big enough that it comes out fairly. So that's where we are at the moment.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I have nothing to add to it, and it's just, you have done phenomenal work on it, and let's move forward.
I think the information that Gracia provided in the memorandum of November 14th clarify things and crystallize how I think best that we proceed with these costs. And I think it was very important that the WPCA did take their time and took a step back and waited until phase was completed to get a clear picture of what all these costs were. I know the residents were very concerned, wanted to have the information sooner, but I think that we, did the proper thing. We have done our due diligence, and I am comfortable with moving forward with these figures that we're looking at this evening.
Thanks, Ian. You did a good job presenting the numbers. I just want to add one more comment, and that is that in addition to settling on some numbers for what has happened in the past, which I think are eminently fair, we also had major discussions about how we prevent getting into this situation for phases 2 and 3. So there are going to be some changes in how things are done in the future. We don't have exactly what's going to happen. But one of the things that I'd like to see disappear is the word soft costs. These are costs associated with putting the system in the ground, as the idiot said. And they're just a part of the cost, whether they're engineering, whether they're CREAT, whether it's administrative people or engineers managing a bid. These are all costs that have to be borne, and it's going to get fairly complicated in phase 2 and 3, and we need to, I think we've learned our lesson, and I think we're going to move forward with a much fairer allocation of costs.
I concur with the comments, for the most part, made by board members, and just want to voice my support on that.
I'd like to voice my support as well. I think there's been a great deal of discussion between ourselves and in our various meetings. I think we have considered those factors.
I concur with the same. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, I don't have anything to add except that I signed the paperwork for the clean water funding last Friday. And one of the papers that I signed was that we would, pay back the loan by raising funds, and benefit assessments is one of the ways that we have to do that.
This is for phase 2, you said?
Yeah, for phase 2. So it's a necessary evil.
At this point, I'd like to make a motion that we direct the staff of the WPCA to prepare a benefit assessment list for Phase 1 engineering and CRAD costs with a total amount of $362,875 attributable to the property owners for 314 properties, which works out to an approximate per property cost of $1,156, all subject to final revision, but that should be pretty close, for board consideration at the next regular meeting of the Old Saybrook WPCA.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
I just want to comment one more time on this.
And just so everyone understands what we're doing, we're preparing the benefit assessment list. It then goes through the standard procedure of a benefit assessment where there will be a public hearing, there will be 30 days to comment or to make it to object, or whatever the rules and regulations are on that. So this is not final tonight, but these are the numbers we're recommending that the staff go forward with, and that it'll move to the next step of public hearing.
This is the same process that we did with our costs.
Correct.
Anyone else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
With one extension, right, George?
No, I said aye.
You have to abstain.
You need to abstain.
I have to abstain, I'm sorry.
I don't see any old business. Moving on to the
Ian. The CRAD agreement amendment addresses CRAD services with regard to enforcement, and it needed an update that was required two changes. One had to do with the compensation for CRAD staff, and I would note that the Director of Health and the Registered Sanitarian stay at the same level, and administrative staff was added at $45.20 per hour. The other change to the agreement was what enforcement support services were. It took a while to go back and forth on the exact language. There are specific tasks there, legal in nature, that are listed, and I would point out at the end of that, the last phrase is other related services that support such efforts and activities as are approved by the Old Saybrook WPCA program manager or the board of directors as applicable. And I added that because there are costs that could conceivably go over $500. Jim Monopoly was okay with doing those things first and then coming to the board. And originally we wanted prior approval so that there was less of a question, but he's comfortable with this and this is what we settled on. So that's the agreement before you to vote on.
I have a question. You talked about WPCA as the board, as meaning the board of directors.
Yes.
Is that clear?
Yes.
All right. I also had another question, and it could be because it's written in legalese here. Under CRAD responsibilities, that first paragraph. It says CRAD shall provide the CRAD services for those properties whose septic system upgrades, if any, will be funded in part with funds from the CWF. And then the second sentence says the CRAD services consist of these services described in Schedule A, including for lots not accepting CWF funds. So it seems to be contradictory. Am I reading it wrong?
I mean, that's what it says. I don't, it probably is, the lawyers put this together, so I assume it was specifically to cover both situations. They've just defined them separately.
So is CRAD providing services for lots not accepting?
We're sitting in front, we can't hear.
Pass the microphone down.
For example, you had a chief sanitarian reviewing.
Please start over. Please start over from the beginning, from your comments. So
Okay,
everybody knows.
Elsa asked what services CRAD would perform for properties not in the Clean Water Fund program. So we start at the beginning with, say, 210 properties in Maple Avenue. You sit down with the chief sanitarian, review all the properties and see what their designations are, gives them a file. So is it tank and leaching? Is it just a tank? Is it just leaching? Is it upgrade compliant? Down the road, sometimes properties that opt out, you have to follow up with them. You've got the orders to upgrade. So there are a lot of services provided for the properties that are not in the program.
So just to clarify, what you're saying is that properties that may opt out in Maple Avenue, as an example, CRAD still has expenses for enforcing that which we're responsible for.
Right, according to the ordinance. So in other words, they still live in the district. They're still subject to the ordinance.
Okay.
And they still get their NOLs. the designations and so on. And then they're followed up with, they've got to be upgraded to line.
Okay. And CRAD is the one that makes the decision whether it's upgrade compliant or what
Right.
system
They're the
they need.
regulatory agency.
Right, okay.
They tell us what's got to go in the ground and if they meet the upgrade standards or not.
Thank you, Robbie. It's just that, you know, it's contradictory. Does anyone else want to have a comment or question?
Just quickly, this has been prepared?
This has been prepared by the attorney for the WPCA.
Yes.
I do have a statement. For the most part, everybody knows my feeling on CRAD, but there's one line here, activities as are approved by the Old Saybrook Water Pollution Control Authority Program Manager or the board. I feel it should be the board. And I'm totally opposed to the amounts of money that are being requested per hour.
As I pointed out, the amounts that are currently in the agreement, they have not changed for the director or registered sanitarian. There was no amount in there for administrative staff who may be involved in enforcement. So that was the one addition.
As I said, I am totally opposed to the amounts. I feel they are too high for something that they are required to do to keep this town healthy. And that's as far as I'm going.
Okay. I mean, as far as the approval process, I mean, it's like everything else. It's over 500 and the board takes it over that. So that's just standard.
I apologize to make a comment, I guess, to begin with, but if the property owner has opted out and these are CRAD services, why wouldn't the bill go directly to the homeowner? If they've opted out of our services and our system and choose not to participate with the board and with the district, to me they're inviting that opportunity on their own. Now, I know that's a difficult question, and I apologize.
No, the reason is that this is an enforcement policy based on the town of Old Saybrook WPCA program.
Right.
So there's just been an agreement that this is what we would do, and this is how we would handle it. If they were enforcing something that they had done as opposed to the project, then it would be direct. This is project related.
Right.
We have upgrade standards that are specific to this
I
project.
understand, Steve. So I understand.
Within the district,
Right.
this is the services provided. Got nothing to do with clean water.
Any other comments or questions? Does anyone care to make a motion to approve?
Yes.
Make a motion that we approve CRAD Agreement Amendment 2 with reference number 3684354V3 and authorize the chairman to sign.
Second that.
I will second that motion.
Any further discussion? Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained?
business to add item B, approval of the WPCA meeting schedule for 2015.
I'll second.
Is there any comment or discussion?
The meeting dated for November 24th.
We're just approving the change in the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
All right, now I'll make a motion that we approve the WPCA meeting schedule for 2015.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yes, the meeting dated November 24th, 2015. Since that is the day after the town meeting, I would cancel that one myself. That's it. Because it's two, I know, and it's 2 meetings right in a row, which,
Yeah, we just did that.
I know. But,
Is it worth proposing an alternate date?
no, just canceling it.
Any other comments or?
I'm okay with 2 meetings in a row. I can do 2.
Anyone else?
Are we sure that the town meeting's on the 23rd? Third Monday of, which, the third Monday would be the 16th.
It's the second.
Town meeting.
Oh, the town meeting.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of adopting this meeting schedule signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn our meeting at,
I'm making a motion that we adjourn our meeting at 8:35 p.m. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?